I, with gleeful excitement and anticipation, was looking forward to King of Kotha, a project led by Dulquer Salmaan, which is an attempt from Malayalam cinema to join the pan-Indian party of an action spectacle. While Hindi, Tamil, Telugu and Kannada have had their respective films cause mass hysteria in theatres, Malayalam cinema, at least from a commercial point of view, have not translated a pan-Indian commercial action flick across states. The hope and prayer for most genuine film fans was that King of Kotha would fill that void. However, are we really expecting too much from a debutant director? Are we expecting Dulquer to have a performance of a lifetime as a dreaded gangster while he has mostly made a name for himself in human dramas? All of these conflicting thoughts consumed me, as many who viewed the film on the first day dismissed it as 3 hours of boredom. With a clean slate, I went in for this film in an empty theatre in Melbourne, and I have so many thoughts that I want to talk about and discuss with all of you. King of Kotha focuses on the town of Kotha that is riddled with vice, a town inundated with drugs and crime, and the role of the police is best described is inconsequential. Police officers come and go, but the anarchy of Kotha persists. With the entry of a new officer in charge, one gets to know the history of the town from the 80s and 90s and the significance of the relationship shared between Raju and Kannan. How this relationship unwinds into several conflicts between gangs, family members and friends forms the basic storyline of King of Kotha. I, with a heavy heart, am going to tell you the good and bad aspects of the film so that you guys can ultimately decide whether to watch it in theatres or not. The good. Jake's Bejoy. If there is one individual from the team of King of Kotha who leaves an impression where you just can't complain, it is Jake's Bejoy and his marvelous background score dispersed throughout the screenplay. The one song in the film, which is essentially an item song, is probably the most awkward I've seen Dulquer around a woman. Probably because he has to partly ogle at her and touch her waist, something Dulquer hasn't done with conviction in front of camera. He looks like a shy boy entering a bar, and even though there is merit to the argument that his heart lies somewhere else as a character, Dulquer's dancing skills or lack of don't help in clearing up that communication. The film could have done away with that one song, but the score that assists several of the combat scenes and cues of entry really elevates the otherwise lethargic running time of the film. What's heartbreaking, however, is that while Jake's Bejoy totally understood his assignment, the rapid and fast-paced editing and incessant jump cuts nullify the otherwise impactful score, and more on that later. There is an art to the mass that is often overlooked, and King of Kotha really misses the ball in being Malayalam cinema's unapologetic answer to that genre, which Bhishma Parvam did with so much conviction. Production design and potential. For a movie to transport you to the 80s and 90s, several of its departments have to get the job right on point, and I can wholeheartedly say that the production design by Nimish Tanur and the art direction by Manoj Arakal really helps in at least accurately portraying a chapter from recent history in India. You go to this football-obsessed town where several gangs call the shots of law and order, and it really had all the ingredients for a brilliant period gangster film, but the visuals and the attention to detail in each frame is let down by a half-baked, predictable story that carries on for an exhausting running time, making one only for a limited time appreciate all that is in front of them. The film really broke my heart because I kept on thinking about what King of Kotha could have been, what it could have done differently with its action sequences, what it could have done better with its staging, what it could have done better with Raju's family dynamic, his love interest over the years, his friendships along the way. Everything had so much potential, but is either squandered or simply abandoned. For a movie to have so many loose ends, one should be terribly excited for a movie to develop into a franchise, but the film does not also leave you in the concluding moments with that palpable excitement that you had in films like Vikram of the potential of the universe and what lies ahead. I will get to Dulquer Salmaan and his performance later, but if there is an actor that definitely needs appreciation for his performance, it is Shabir as Kannan, a man with a brewing aspiration to be influential and, more importantly, wealthy. He is volatile, impulsive, emotional and naive in many cases, and it works brilliantly with respect to the dynamic he shares with Raju. He packs in the style required for a worthy antagonist in the film and the human frailties that come into effect when things get exceptionally complicated in Kotha. Other than one or two moments of humor with respect to Chemban Vinod's character where I admittedly chuckled, and Shami Telekan, who could have given us so much, either the characters are terribly underutilized or barely have screen time to have a lasting impact with you. The underwhelming aspects. exhausting running time. The film is close to 3 hours long, and as a movie viewer, I have been used to this running time for quite a few years, as most of the event films, especially the commercial mass action movies, have been of a runtime around the same ballpark. KGF Chapter 2 was around 2 hours and 50 minutes, Pushpa was around 3 hours. So one is relatively accustomed to the creator spending large portions of the film in either character development or world building. But the pacing of King of Kotha just takes a toll on your patience for the incessant need of the creators having to jump timelines so that they can choreograph another return of the hero and formulate an action scene around him. This cycle becomes repetitive as any conflict that leads to an injury or a point of realization is followed by a leap in the time period that culminates in a different setting with more or less the same characters being in conflict with each other. While the first half still held your attention, the second half, especially its concluding moments, take a predictable route, where your investment in the story and the characters and the outcome slowly dwindles. Choppy and lackluster action sequences. One of the most heartbreaking parts about the film for me is the choppy and lackluster choreography of the combat sequences. Imagine that most of the conflict and violence that arises in the film is that of close combat. So you've got everything from knives to swords, heck, even pens to inflict bloodshed in the film, but there is literally not a single action sequence that will be etched in your memory and something that you can rave about with your friends, barring one sequence. This sequence comes in the concluding moments of the film as the camera transitions to become an FPS video game style POV shot as Raju annihilates all the goons around him with guns and a sword. The action sequences in the film are haphazardly edited otherwise, so much so that many of the movements in the action sequences are incoherent, not having a start and end moment through many sequences. This is not only true for action, but even something as simple as a football match that in popular media like games and movies like Goal have all the blueprints of how to make a match nail-biting, but the jump cuts, the apparent body doubles, and the lack of flair in the gameplay just gives an abrupt tonality to this film. I can't tell you how many times Jake's Bejoy hypes you up with his background score, you anticipate Dulquer to wreak havoc, you get on the edge of your seat waiting for the mania to erupt, and eventually get just a very lackluster combat sequence. And from what I hear, the Malayalam mass dialogues have really missed the mark for even die-hard fans. This is the point where I really miss the synergy Amal Neerath found with Sushin Shyam in Bhishma Parvam, a perfect symbiotic relationship where the action choreography assisted by the dynamic Mokobot was designed perfectly on beat to Sushin's music, and this synergy is absolutely lacking in King of Kotha. Untapped family dynamic. You know what my experience with Malayalam cinema has been in the last 4 or 5 years? That even if the film falters in several aspects, it will always have its emotional core intact. There will always be a moment that will tug at your heartstrings even if holistically the film did not work. When you watch King of Kotha, you realize how this film would have worked far better if it focused on the interpersonal human relationships versus the attempt at making a mass action film. The film genuinely has all the ingredients of a Shakespearean tragedy, with influential and conniving better halves, gang rivalries, friendships transitioning to utter betrayal, and it all culminating into a human conscience kicking in probably when it's too late. But it's executed in such a half-baked fashion, it makes you sad rather than angry, disappointed rather than enraged, because you see a film in the pursuit of wanting to be in the leagues of a pan-Indian celebrated action film rather than have its own identity. Curious case of Dulquer. I am a huge Dulquer Salmaan fan and have been an avid follower of his creative choices ever since Bangalore days. For an individual who has made a name for himself doing compelling characters that are an offshoot from the commercial space, Dulquer going absolutely balls to the wall commercial in a gangster film was exciting. Could the sweet, charming and understated Dulquer pull off an intimidating, slightly unhinged and violent gangster? I feel like his portrayal of Raju is neither exceptional nor underwhelming. Through most of the initial running time, you can see a lot of Dulquer in Raju. Rather than an absolute transformation, he still has this boyish charm about him, and while the portions aim to emphasize him as this menacing figure that everyone fears, I could not feel as if he presented that aura that the rival gang should tremble at their feet when he arrives. It is upon his transformative appearance in the second half where you see glimpses of a manic and crazy Dulquer, which is admirable, but it also appears in flashes rather than being fully convincing. I really respect Dulquer for going out on the limb with this film and attempt to do something different, but his attempt gets squandered even more with the lackluster treatment of a script that is far too predictable, far too dragged, and that eventually mimics already successful projects in the same genre versus wanting to stand on its own 2 feet as a unique experience for the audience. Bhishma Parvam still is the gold standard in recent years when you look at Malayalam cinema attempting mass commercial action films. I'm still heartbroken. And that was the video, guys. Write down in the comments below what you thought about King of Kotha. Please don't forget to follow me on Instagram, the handle's right in front of you. Follow me at JammyPants4. Also, please support us by smashing the like button and subscribing to our channel for weekly content ahead. Thank you for watching.